Man, I've been wanting to interview you for a long time. Tell the world who you are and what you do.
Hey, what's going on, bro? Okay, I'm Eddie Lonelli from Blue Line Kennels, and I breed the extra large pit bulls.
Man, I remember seeing your dogs on the old Bully Barbecue videos and Bully Badass TV and all that stuff. First and foremost, tell people the history, when you got involved, why you went, the direction you went. Give them your backstory.
Well, the dog love, started as a very young kid, and then it got more intense because my parents wouldn't let me have a dog.
Yeah.
And the thing about me is I grew up around a breeder, so around the neighborhood, people will acquire his dogs, and then they'll be walking them back to his house. And to get to his house, you had to cross my house. We were little kids, we weren't allowed outside of the chain link fence in our own property. So I would always remember stopping whatever I was doing and admiring these pit bulls. At the time, I didn't really know what was going on as far as what I was looking at, like a purebred pit bull, but the image just fascinated me. I seen dudes walking them with their spike collars and their thicker chains and stuff, and they were just like so powerful. And as I got older, I would be able to walk home from school. I would pass by this breeder's house. I used to live in the city of Baldwin Park, California, so about 20 houses away from me is where this dude lived. And every morning on my way to school and every day on my way home, my highlight was passing by this guy's house and admiring his pit bulls. They were Colby blood, and they were like black cowpatch pits.
Okay.
So that's where the original love of the dog came. As a youngster, I wasn't able to really hold up, and my parents are always the type that they'll let me do something as long as I could fund it. I have 4 brothers and sisters that are all younger than me, so their money was always tied up, with them. So as soon as I was old enough to kind of have a summer job, that's when the conversation started. Like, can I get one now? I got my own vet money. I got my own dog food money. Whatever the dog needs, I'll take care of it. You guys won't have to do nothing. And that's where the first ownership of a pure pit bull puppy came.
And that was a Colby bred dog?
No, we'll take it back because I jumped ahead of time. All right. I grew up a little bit, and I made friends with the owner of the dogs. His name was Jesse. So what I ended up doing was becoming his friend, and this guy was into lowriders, and he happened to be in the same car club, a mini truck car club that my uncle was in. It was called Weekend Toys. So that was the connection. My uncle knew him. I started a conversation like, hey, you're in the same car club my uncle's from, and I really like the dogs. I live over here. Can I come help you? I'll pick up poop, or I'll wash the dogs for you. I just want to get my hands on these dogs and be around these dogs. And weirdly enough, I was young. I don't know how old I was, but he was around 21. I must have been 9, 10, 11 years old, around those ages when I started talking to him. And he would accept me in his house like I was his buddy. You know what I'm saying? I think about it, when I was that age, I wouldn't really get along or want kids around me. You know what I'm saying? So it was just weird to me that this dude let me in, and he would have me help him wash the car, help him with the dogs. And we just became friends to the point where he was like, you know what? You always do these chores and you help me around the house. When the next litter comes about, I'm going to give you one, So I came home, told my parents, all excited. Time came around. They said, yes, yeah, whatever. You could have a puppy. The time came around when it was time to bring this puppy home a couple months later, and my parents were against it. I had newborn brothers and sisters. You know, my mom had twins, and then a year after that, she had my younger sister. So she was like, no, we're not going to let these pit bulls come to the house. They're going to eat the kids. And plus, I was, you know, at the oldest, 11 or 12 years old. So my heart was broken. I was crying all night because I couldn't bring this dog home. Got over it. We moved out of that city. Years later, I'm in junior high. I meet this guy. So I used to have to pick up my little brothers and sisters from the elementary school and then walk home with them. It was a breeder that used to breed some non-papered, more game-style pit bulls. And one day he brought one in his van, and then I was like, holy shit, let me go make friends with this dude. I want to go talk to him about his dogs. And sure enough, months and months of talking. Every day he's waiting for his daughter, and I'm waiting for my little brothers. And, you know, we're just talking about these dogs. And once I met him the first time, we were always friends. You know, we would always wait together and conversate. So he ended up giving me my actual first dog, which was a non-papered Holly Ruffian. It was a black cow patch puppy. And I ended up getting my first non-paper dog around the age of like 14 years old, 15 years old.
Gotcha. Okay. So the Ruffian blood, we're talking probably more of a, back then, probably more of a gamey Amstaff.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like exactly. That. Okay. So
it was, at that point, there was no bullies. There was no talk about big dogs and no internet. For me, in 1994, 1995. So I don't even know at what stage the internet was at that time, but to me it was non-existent because I only had computers in my computer class. You know?
Right. Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah.
So then, all right. So that was your first dog. How did you get from that to where you got started into, we'll call it the quote unquote bully game?
So after that non-paper dog came a couple more dogs, which was, I made up my mind. I was not into the black and white dogs. I was not into the brindle dogs. My favorite color was a red nose. So after that non-paper dog came a couple papered red noses where from one of those breedings, I bred to a blue, and miraculously, an R-red female bred to a cowpatch white and blue dog gave me reds, blacks, blues, and cowpatch blues. So those were my first pits, but those were even before my bully style pits. You feel me?
All right.
So it came to the point where I was looking on the penny savers, and over here on the West Coast, we have the auto trade. I'm not the auto trader. The LA Times, people used to advertise dogs in, and the penny saver. So every Wednesday, I would rush to, when I got home, I would rush to the mailbox, go get the penny saver, open it up. It was like an old newspaper with different sections of everything for sale around the city. And you had a pet section, and then I would always call people and see what they had and see how close they were to me. And then my dad would take me on the weekends, go check them out and stuff. And, you know, I eventually met established real breeders through doing that. You know, so in my, before I even got into the bullies, I got to meet Richard Alvarado, which was, I don't know if you know the game blood, Vera Storm, the Storm bloodline.
No, not off the top of my head. Hell, I'm still learning myself.
Yeah, okay, well, this guy took over her bloodline once she passed away. And then this was a pocket pit before there was a pocket pit. They used to call them Alvarado's compact pits. He used to advertise on this penny saver. I would talk to him and then go check out the puppies he had for sale. Of course, I was one of those tire kicker kids that where I just wanted to go see them, and I wasn't really going to buy shit. And I would sweet talk my dad into driving me 10, 15 minutes away just to check out these puppies on a Saturday morning and then come back home. You know, so eventually I visited real breeders. I got to check out their yard. So I was able to like see the difference between a pet owner breeder and like a real kennel breeder. You know what I'm saying? And this guy, Richard Alvarado, had kennels in his backyard. He had ear croppings. He did himself. He had customers. So he was disabled from a trucking accident. So he was full-time dog breeding at this point where I met him. And then that's where I got to see like, this is cool. This guy had Harleys. He had Impalas. He had his own house, swimming pool. And it was just money from pit bulls. And I was like, you know what? Like, I like this is cool. If there's a future in this, I would like to be this when I grow up. And I was like 15, 16 when I figured out like you could do something with dog breeding. And it was much, much later that I got into the American bullies, which I'll get into that right now with you because I didn't get into it.
Before you go that direction, when you say compact pits, were these bullier compact pits or were they like smaller like Staffordshire Bull Terriers?
Like small 35-pound Staffordshires. Okay? They were originally game dogs, but at that time it was probably like the mid-90s. Okay. It was a lot of BSL movement. It was a lot of we're gonna outlaw the breed. So it wasn't really a game bred operation at that point. He used to focus on just keeping them short and beefy, but 100% pit bull looking. There was no cross of Frenchies. There was no cross of English bulldogs. And actually, my number one foundation rule for everything I do came from him. From him telling me, look, to get what you want, it's going to take you a lot longer if you do it the right way, but then it's never going to go away. You're going to have it forever. Because at that point, there was mixed breeding. There was still a lot of stuff going on because it was pretty popular even at that time to have the short beefy pits and then the big extra large pits and then the game pits in the middle, you know? So a lot of people at that time were cheating and were trying to create his version of the smaller pits, but they were using different breeds. So he would tell me like, look, nobody, and then at that time, like honor, like dog breeding and having honor and having a reputable name, it mattered. You know, so he never wanted to have his name tarnished. He never wanted to be known for cheating to accomplish what he has. Because it was very hard to get the style of dog he had by doing it purebred. Because even if you bred pure pit bulls, you couldn't get the shortness and the stockiness that he was producing. You know? So he would tell me like, look, whatever you do in this breed, don't cheat. Don't paper hang. Don't do anything because all that comes to light. You get big enough and whoever helped you cheat is going to expose you. Which at that time, there was different breeders that were trying to do stuff and then they would get exposed and then no one really wanted to mess with you because you were known for doing some shady shit. You know, so in my upbringing, even till this day, that's how I run my program. Like everything I ever got, I never lied. I never paper hanged to get size. I never went outside of that. I figured I was smart enough to produce what I wanted. So, you know, I just always operated in the safe way because at that point, at 22 years old, I was already breeding dogs, living in my own house, and paying bills off of my dogs because I was 100% dog breed. So I didn't want to ever tarnish my name enough to where it would hurt my reputation or my sales. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And that's very rare too. Me and Mike were just talking about that. Mike at Devil's Den. Just like, man, the game just became kind of cutthroat after a while. Because there was people.
Not after a while because it's always been cutthroat. Even when I'm telling you, like my dad, at the point where I was going to Richard Alvarado's house, it was I was very young, so I couldn't really I couldn't ride my bike to his house because he was kind of a little ways from my house. It was close, but it wasn't that close. So my dad would just I developed a friendship where he would let me come over on Saturday or Sunday, whatever day he was dedicating just to stay home. And my dad would drop me off like at 8, 9 in the morning and then pick me up like at 5, or Richard would come just drop me off at my house.
Right.
And while the bully lane of things came kind of, okay, we're talking about 1995 right here. And the bully stuff in my yard, I would probably say it started in 2001.
Okay.
It was when I was already breeding the bulkier, more impressive style pit bulls with size. Because at one point it got in my yard where I tried to do both. The real pit bulls, well, I call them real pit bulls, more like what you would call the game style pit bulls. I was doing the red nose style pit bulls, and then after a while, I knew the difference between, okay, people are paying this much for a game style pit bull, but for a blue or for a bully blue, starting rate is $1,000. A red nose or a black or any game dog is $300 to $500 or $600 at that time. So then, and I still lived at my mom's house when I was trying to do the bigger style pit bulls, but the accidents would happen, and my more game style dogs would always whoop on my up and coming big bully style pits.
Right.
To the point where I just had to get rid of my more pit bull dominant style dogs and focus more on my docile, bigger pit bulls.
It makes
we're
sense.
talking in 2001 right here already. In
Okay.
2002, I had purchased my first home, and I was 22 years old. So I had to move out of mom's house because she was already tired of me and my 6 pit bulls, and my little brothers couldn't really play in their own backyard because either one, it was full of poop. I would try to keep it clean, but you can never wipe every piece off the grass, and the little kids like to roll around and play everywhere. So she was already tired of my dogs, and one day she told me like we were arguing about the dogs, and she's like, I'm just gonna let them go. I'm gonna open the door one day, and when you come home from school, you're not gonna have dogs no more. And I was like, nope, stop right there. I was going to college at that time, so I'm like, stop right there. I'd rather move out, and we won't have this problem, than to let go of my dogs, because don't do that. It's just going to be a problem.
Yeah.
And that's when I started hunting down. I was a naive youngster thinking I could buy a house at that age because I did have a little money saved up, but it just you think about it, 22-year-olds in 2002 trying to buy a home and actually pulling it off is kind of really, really rare. But it started because my mom just didn't want my pits at the house no more. It was just always either there's too many flies, or kids can't even go outside, or they're going to get mauled by your dogs, which all my dogs are friendly. It's just at that era, the dogs were always on the news. They were always going to get outlawed because they killed somebody or bit somebody. So my parents, watching that over and over, were just paranoid. Like, dude, is this going to happen to us with our kids?
Yeah.
And our crazy son's the one doing this shit in the backyard, with sticks and bulls in the back.
I hear you. Yeah. Well, all right, let me ask you this. Earlier, when you first came into the interview, you said you breed XL pits. Now, Mike Gallo, I don't know if you knew, but I run the Battlebred family. It's a new registry. And Mike Gallo just registered a couple dogs with us because we register American bullies if they're working type, and we register purebred American Pit Bull Terriers, the game type. But those dogs that are in between, some call them street pits. Some call them bully pits. We just call them something in between. We register them as American Pit Bulldog. Do you think your XL pits, do you think they fall into that category kind of? They're not quite bully, but they're not quite pit bull. They're somewhere like in between?
No.
You'd say they're more on the bully side these days?
No.
Break it down for me.
I know. And I stand in the fucking gray line if there is a fucking gray line. You know? Okay. So this is how I could explain this, right? Because I was around before this whole bully movement, and then I was a part of the infancy of this bully. And what's out there on the interviews, especially from the East Coast breeders, is a bunch of bullshit. It's not even fucking true. There's a East Coast version of the bully upbringing, or whatever you would call it, the infancy of the American bully.
So you're talking more like the Dave Wilson end of things.
100% Dave Wilson.
Okay.
End of things. Because I don't agree with what they try to say. He sells the Razor's Edge story, which is limelights and Hollywood, and it's cool, and that's what he believes. But that's not the West Coast story. And the West Coast stories haven't been told because the breeders before me, the original bully breeders that were still breeding American Pit Bull Terriers, are not interviewed, and they don't give a shit about being in the limelight nowadays. Mm-hmm. And he tells what's beneficial to him.
Okay.
He tells a story that has everybody believing anything that's beneficial to him. Which, when the first time I met Dave Wilson, Richard Barajas was already in existence. Some of the bully stuff was already in existence. Saul from RBG was already breeding. I already had my bully style of pit bulls. We were going to the UKC shows to get to do our little own meetups on the side. Dave Wilson was inside of the show ring, prancing around with his show dogs. We were not part of the UKC. We were the bully. American bully did not exist at this time. The word American bully did not exist at this time. Mm. I like to say, and I don't tell nobody, but the truth is, I'm the reason why, not I alone, but a group of us are the reason why there was a movement to start the American bully name. Mm. Why? Because a couple, the message board, the MSN message boards were popping at that time. Mm-hmm. And a few of us were like, where the fuck do we meet and see these dogs? Nowhere. We can't. There is no shows for our style dogs. We're obviously not UKC show dogs, but we were trying to meet up at the UKC show events because why? They were close to a lot of these people that I'm going to mention, either in the Inland Empire or Los Angeles, and we would just put it on the message board like, hey, we're going to meet up at this park at this time. And I would put those messages up. Me and my friend Ryan would each put $100. I would buy $100 worth of beers. He would buy $100 worth of carne asada. And we would be like, all right, whoever shows up with your dogs, we're going to be on this side of the park. Come hang out with us. We'll feed you. You're going to drink with us. And that's where, actually I jumped a little bit because, okay, I'm going to go back to the first times we were meeting at the UKC events. The police was called on us. Mm. Why? Because the UKC showers, the breeders of the UKC style dogs hated our style of dogs and hated our personas. Why? Because we were dressed like thugs. We were thugs. Fuck it. We were thugs.
Facts.
Everybody in the circle was fucking thugs. We were baggy pants. We fit the profile. We had these non-UKC show dogs. And they didn't like it. We were 50 to 100 feet from where they were doing their show rings. We try to, be close enough, but not be too close, And I remember it was about 5 of us talking in a circle. We all were holding our pits. They were all well behaved except for probably my puppy, which was like a 6 or 7 month puppy that was just mouthing off, not aggressively, not showing no signs of aggressive, just barking because he's not used to being around other dogs.
Right.
This lady ran up to us, got in our face, saying we were facing off our dog. She was going to call the police. And one of us told her, fuck off, go call the police. Her husband runs up to the little circle, tries to get a little brave, but knows his place.
Right.
And they walk away and they wait for the police, and then they escort us out of the park. And that was the original, conflict with these dudes. Like, all right, well, they're not going to accept us at the UKC shows, so fuck them. Let's just plan our own little thing at that same park, because we know you could show up with 30 or 20 dogs and they ain't going to say shit. So let's put it on the message boards, and only this day that the UKC is not going to show up, then we're gonna do our thing. And the people that got in our face, they were part of, I don't remember her name, but Dave Wilson was there that day. That's why I'm like, I know who this dude is, because this dude was part of the UKC movement when they were kicking the bullier bred pit bulls out of the program. You know what I'm saying? So that little incident with the police getting called on us is kind of what started the division between fuck the UKC shows, but we can't say fuck the UKC because we all have UKC dogs.
Right.
So let's just do our own thing. And we knew we can't show up at a dog show. Our dogs are not in the categories of anything they show for. And we don't really give a shit about that.
Right.
The new wave at that point was, we can't fight pit bulls. We don't really give a fuck about the fighting lines. We want size. We want to impress, the impressive looking pit bulls. And that's what a lot of us were owning or trying to own at that particular time, which they didn't have a place with the UKC shows or anything that they did.
Right. Okay. See, the way I understood it was that Dave was there for all that. I didn't know he was actually not a part of the group kind of thing.
Okay. When this was happening, we were already breeding bully style pits, the XL pits that you call now, or double XL pits. We had them. We were holding them. We were meeting up for that. When I met Dave Wilson, this was before the big boom of Razor's Edge in the West Coast. Right. So people were making a big stink about this dude, Dave Wilson. Not people, like a couple of my friends, this dude's going to be here. They were more online than I was. So They were like, this guy's a somebody, this. I don't care. I don't care about show lines. I don't care about show dogs. So at this point in my life, I don't care about Dave Wilson. Dave Wilson comes into my life years later when I become part of the Elite Edge, the only member ever in existence to not have Razor's Edge dogs, but be part of the Razor's Edge. So at this point, I'm like, I'm there. I'm not really one of the fans of Dave Wilson because I don't really give a shit. So I'm just doing my thing. And I remember Blue Nation, people with Blue Nation dogs. Blue Nation is Larry Duran. We were all meeting up at these parks. The people from GK that I remember. A lot of kennels that don't even exist no more. This bloodline, Genghis Khan, as you know, still exists in the extra large world. But at that point, there was more pit bull breeders, but it's weird because people called the pit bulls, and they weren't game dogs in the West Coast. And that's the point where I started transitioning from game dogs to and at this point they weren't even fucking called XL pit bulls. It was just 100-pound pit bull, 80-pound pit bull, 75-pound pit bulls. But they weren't really breaking them out of a class of a pit bull. It was just a pit bull because I remember before I even owned dogs in the neighborhood, there was 110-pound brindle pits, 115 pounds red nose, and everything. There was big pits. So
right, that was that ABA, that was that ADBA stuff when people started crossing in mastiff stuff for the weight pulls. That's how we ended up with these big dogs.
No, well, you know what? These were ghetto pits, bro. So we couldn't say what exactly they had.
Right? Yeah. Street pits.
I was so young, and the people that owned pits at that time were my friends' older brothers. You know, we were like in our teens, and they were already in their early 20s. So I remember in the early 90s seeing big ass pit bulls. But at that time frame, the people that had mixed pits admitted they had mixed pits, and the people that had pure pits, which were hood pit bulls without papers, but these dudes want to breed to other pits. They're not interested in breeding to a different breed to make a pit bull. At this day and age, is still we're breeding pit bulls, and somehow some of these lines are just becoming bigger purebred pit bulls. Because I remember seeing these dogs, and they don't look like the newer American bullies. They just look ripped up, little rib cages, big chest, big heads, and at the heaviest, probably 105 to 110 pounds.
Well, the funny thing is,
they were not mixed, to my knowledge, and at that age, I could already point out a more purebred pit bull with a mixed pit. I've always been a fan of the pits. I've always had the pit bull books of all the game dogs.
Yeah.
So
that was kind of the thing for me is, part of why I started this registry was just to keep game dogs, real pit bull terriers, in a lane of their own. But when I came into the game, I didn't even know about game dogs or game dog lines. When I first came in, I remember I had like 5 backyard bred pits. And it was the first time I seen a blue dog walking down the street, cropped ears, big ass head, not like the bullies of today. It looked like one of your dogs, which that's why.
What year was this?
This was probably 2004, 2005, upstate New York.
Check this out. In around 1994 to 1995, around there is when I saw my first blue pit.
Honestly, I feel like I should have been born on the West Coast. I love the cars. I love the way y'all dress. I felt like I always growing up felt like I should have been born in California. But because I always wore like Dickies. I was always a fan of like Impalas and Oldsmobiles and Monte Carlos and all that shit. You know what I mean? Like I was always a fan of those cars, those dogs, that way of dressing. I just always did.
It's a lifestyle that I live right now 100%, bro. Because you named the cars I already own, plus I'll tell you some more shit later on. But it's truly like I always think like, dude, I am so lucky that because my parents immigrated from Mexico, right? But they came from Mexico, and I'm like, dude, I'm so fucking happy my parents landed in Southern California where we did because of that, because of the culture and because of how we could express ourselves.
Yeah, it's just dope. It's just really dope all across the board. I always felt like I should have been on the West Coast. But what I was going to say is, like I said, it's like 2004. I see this. Mind you, I have 5 backyard bred pit bull, quote unquotes. None of them are game dogs, except maybe 2 of them are more on game lines, but I didn't have no papers on any of them. I see this blue dog walking down the street with this big ass head, this just this big dog, and he's calling him a pit bull. Then I go on YouTube and I'm starting to look up, this blue pit bull thing, and I start seeing the Bully Badass TV. Mm-hmm. That's when I first saw you.
Mm-hmm. That's my boy.
Yeah.
Rich. I think Big Rich is the one that did that one, no?
Yeah, but it was owned, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't it owned by Zeke? That's Documentary now.
Okay, then no, you know what? I probably got it mistaken because there was a couple at that era. There was people that just dedicated their whole time to being the advocates to put the shit online. You know, so there's a couple people that, if you pay attention to the YouTubes at that era, there was a lot of interviews, a lot of videos from the shows. You just have to find their pages, and it's been so long, I don't really know which ones were which. But I remember him, and I remember a couple other ones. Did you see a video I posted on my IG from one of my buddy's little brothers came over, and he had a custom-made spike collar that he had made. Fucking thing is like 35 pounds, 6-inch or 7-inch spikes. He was like, dude, I wanted to make the biggest, baddest spike collar ever. And he brought it, showed it to me. I was like, I always see your photo shoots and everything you do, and I know you would appreciate this. So here, I'm gonna let you borrow it for a couple of months. I was like, cool. Spike collars, ear scrubs, muscular, pulling on the end of the lead. That's a pit bull to me. But look, let's go back to what you asked me. You asked me why I call my dogs XL pit bulls and not American bullies. And if you go on YouTube and whatever, you know your history, you'll be like, well, this guy's an idiot because he used to call this shit American bullies. I did. The term came about, I heard one of the interviews, and Mike was saying that he heard somebody else say that he was the first time he heard American bully term. Okay? I don't know. That's the East Coast stuff. In the West Coast, we always had these PSL laws going on because the pit bulls were always shown in a bad light. So we were always in risk, and that was one of my fears when I was growing up. In the news, special coverage, blah, 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 pit bulls attack a pit bull. Pit bulls attack a cop, a male lady. They've mauled up a kid. They're going into the laws to outlaw. It was always, I remember that when I was 10 to 12, 13 years old, and they would all actually worrying me. Like, I would be like, damn, like, the dogs I love are just going to get outlawed, and we're not even going to be owning them. What the fuck am I going to do with the dogs I have? Yeah. And so it was at that point where these barbecues for only the American Bully invites from the MSN message boards were getting popular, right? So we were like, all right, well, somebody was smart enough over here on this side to think of this, which was probably, in my opinion, Larry Duran from Blue Nation, to me, was the first one to, like, use that word and then put it in motion. Why? Because this guy was one of the first guys that threw the big pit bull venues out in Los Angeles. He would try to rent the venues, and as soon as anybody from the venue would hear, we're trying to have a pit bull show, no, all the way across the board. There's talks on the message boards, there's topics going on. Hey, this is happening. They're trying to outlaw the breed. But if we change the name, and since we're not breeding our style of dogs for fighting no more, and we're more on the looks instead of the gameness, we could try to redirect the ownership of this dog where it doesn't fall into the category of a pit bull. And if the pit bulls are outlawed, our dogs would be taken away. So the term American Bully, to me, I give it to Larry Duran because he used it to get the Pomona Airflex, where some of the biggest shows were held at by him. And the whole aim and the whole topic of this name change was not to change the breed, but just to be isolated from the game style pit bulls that were causing a ruckus in the community. Because none of us at this point cared about fighting dogs. We owning the bigger dogs, and if you're smart, you're only avoiding problems if you just go and breed the more docile lines or calm your dogs down a little bit, which is possible because in the breeding world, that's what breeding is about. You make them hot, you make them cold. You change you know, this feature, you change that feature, you make it your bloodline. Breeding is adding and taking away features to me, you know. So, right, we took away the game feature, we added more chest, we added a bigger head that limits their working ability. Doesn't mean they're not from the same breed no more. We're just focused, some of us were just focused on breeding them for size instead of for working. Now, at the same time, there's people that are not educated, that don't know the first thing about breeding, but they love dogs. And in their head, they think they could breed a Mastiff to a Pit Bull and make the style of dogs some of us were making using what was already out there that wasn't mixed. Because, like, me, when I was making my bloodline, this was 9, 10 years, 8 years after I started breeding. And then it was just so much trial and error that I'm like, dude, these dogs are coming up scrawny. They're not selling for too much. There's got to be a change. There's got to be something else. Boom, I discovered the blue dogs. I see they're going for $600 to $1,000 at this point, the mid-90s. And I'm like, you know what? This is almost already double the prices I can get for my Reynolds. So let me add the blue. The blue color is already my favorite color. So when I saw the blue pits, I was like, I got to have them. But I didn't want to buy every blue pit I saw because, like I told you earlier, they were more greyhound-looking dogs than nice-looking dogs when the blue came out. And I was, you know, very selective on who. I mean, yes, I did buy some blue dogs that I wasn't too happy with, but, you know, 10 years into breeding, I figured out the people that have good quality stock are not going to sell it for cheap. So I need to go and start spending some real money so I can get the dogs in my yard that I really want. And as like I told you, there was different ads. That's the only way you can see these dogs. Checking out these ads, calling them and setting up an appointment to go check out their yard. And within that, you can't see the pictures from these ads, I'm telling you. So you had to go and, you know, you would visit 15, 20 people, and 1 or 2 of those guys were the real deal. Like, all right, fuck yeah, I'm going to fuck with this dude. I'm going to mess with this dude. Or you started going to the ADBA shows, the weight pulling shows, which are like 15, 20 minutes from where I live now. And you start meeting people like Oliver De La Cruz, weight pulling, 51 with Benjamin Kennels. You start meeting people like Omar Ross from Dagger Kennels. I remember the first time I saw Juan Gotti, he was 7 months old in Pico Rivera at a weight pulling ADBA event. And Richard was out there. He had him in a round pin. And at that point, I was like, dude, this is one of those blues. At that point, I still didn't have blues. More than like 3 months old. But I remember Richard, remember him with a round pin full of puppies and a round pin for Juan Gotti, which was like 7, 8 months old. And then I got it in my head like, all right, that Juan Gotti is actually the style of dog that I like. He's bigger in the chest. The jaws were really pronounced. The top skull was really wide.
Gotti was flawless. Gotti was my favorite dog.
Alone from all the blue dogs that were out in the market that I had seen. So I was like, who? Didn't really get dude's number. I didn't have a cell phone at that time. I didn't even have a pager at that time. I went with one of my buddies that invited me, and I told him I saw 100 red dogs and black dogs weight pulling, and I was like, dude, that blue dog. I kept on talking about that blue dog forever. You know? And that was the first time kind of where I don't even think American Bully or Bully term was even invented at that time. It was years later, and that's what I'm telling you. When I started breeding these bigger style pits, I was breeding American Pit Bull Terriers under the UKC, and I was picking the more pit bull looking dogs that I would find. At that time, there was also people hanging papers, Mastiffs and English Bulldogs, whatever you could think of. They were being crossed back then. It's just no one knew because it wasn't a big promotional thing. Unless you saw their ad, and you went to their house and saw the puppies, and you knew a little bit about the breed, then you could tell, like, hey, that's not a fucking true sign, that's some bullshit. So at the time of all the conversion from pit bull to American bully, everybody's still breeding pit bulls. There was no new breed even supposed to start with the name change. It was just, hey, this is a way to save our dogs. This is a way to give ownership and legal ownership to the cities, because the pit bull is going to get back. If we have papers for the American bully, then we're not going to get banned, which was the BKC registry, which was way before the ABKC registry. And the ABKC registry is stolen from the BKC registry because the people that used to work with Larry that had the blueprint on how to start a registry back-crossed and double-crossed, backstabbed Larry Duran and went and gave the blueprint to the ABKC, and then they had more of an understanding on how to do things.
Before the ABKC was the BKC.
And this is where I tell you where Dave Wilson's stories don't make sense. His story gives credit to the Elite Edge and him for this grand American bully that it is today, where he used to have to fly to the West Coast to participate in the infancy of a real American bully. He had to come play with us. And he didn't become Dave Wilson. To me, he didn't become Dave Wilson until he made Cruz from Bow Wow Kennels his partner. And Cruz, being a real breeder and knowing pit bulls and having the respect in the West Coast, gave Dave Wilson the green light to do whatever he wanted on this side of town, because no one was going to fuck with his partner. Everybody open arms, handshakes, and hugs to his partner because he was a real one. He is a real Bow Wow Kennels. So to me, that's more or less when I started hearing about the Elite Edge and the Razor Edge bloodline. That is what people know now, a shorter, Amstab, wider stuff. Remember, when I first met Dave Wilson, he had his show lines. And many years passed, and this bully thing started, and he partnered. To me, this is my story. This is the way I see it from the West Coast version of things. It wasn't until he became partners with Cruz from Bow Wow that it gave him the green light to come over here and do the whatever he wanted, the plan that he had. And what did Cruz add? He added other West Coast kennels that were a powerhouse to make the Elite Edge what it was. Dave Wilson and Mike, from my understanding, how I looked at it, were the power players in the East Coast. Mike being the muscle and the looks of they never put it out that way, but to me, that's how I looked at it. Mike's a muscle of the operation. Dave's a little guy that knows what he's doing. And then when they teamed up with the West Coast and they got more West Coast kennels involved into their breeding operation, and they invested into the whole Elite Edge movement, that's when it became a powerhouse to me.
You're talking you're talking Mike Devil's Den?
Mike Devil's Den, which is why I'm even talking to you, because he told me you should do this, you should do that. I don't give interviews to just anybody. That's why our first interview didn't go anywhere. He told me, you should do this, bro. I really recommend you talk to this dude. He's really doing positive stuff, and your history and what you did needs to be put out there. So then I looked at your YouTube and I'm like, dude, hell yeah, I'm gonna fuck with this dude, because he's already has people I respect on his channel, and he's doing something where it's information that's not out there. You can't. What I'm telling you is not out there. West Coast breeders, they're not on the limelight. They don't care about their own reputation. They don't care about this. It was all about the dogs. That's why I think the West Coast story is not really out there like it should be.
I have one interview with Gary Doc Moore from Greyline, and he kind of said the same thing. He said, he was flat out sick of where the ABKC went, I said, what do you want to do now? He was like, I want to breed more gray line. Like, I want to breed more old shit.
I heard his interview, and I had his brother living at my house, Tony Moore.
Oh, rest in peace.
Rest in peace for, I'm not sure, 2 years or some shit. At the end of his life, he had struggles. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So there was a funny story on how that even happened. He came to visit me in his motorhome. He had 2 dogs in his motorhome. He was living at my partner, Kiki, with What's Up Kennels for a minute and in his motorhome. And I guess I found out after this happened. So he called me, came to visit. Of course, I'm freaked out. Like, damn, like, I started with gray line. When I started with the blue dogs, I started way before Gotti with the...
Not to cut you off, but you want all this on record?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I just want to double check.
Whatever I tell you is all on record.
Heard.
Nothing.
Okay.
This is my story.
10-4.
You know? Yeah, so we went, and I had all my my gray line original stock from my early days before I even started my bloodline was more gray line. That's the style of dogs I want. More realistic pit bulls with a little bit of size and the color blue. So Tony's coming to my house to visit me. We hang out for a little bit. He pulls up. I have an acre property. He pulls up in his motorhome. We talk, smoke, chill. He's never really drank, so we were just chilling, talking about these dogs. Show up my kennel, like the dogs and everything. Time to go home. He goes in his car. I come in the house, but not his car, but his motorhome. He goes in his motorhome, and I come in the house, talking to my girl. 5 minutes go by, I'm looking out the window, he's still there. 10 minutes go by, he's still there. 15 minutes go by, he's still there. I go out of my house, I go knock on the door, he rolls on the window, he's like, hey, it won't start, my motorhome won't start. I was like, oh, cool, we have a jump starter. He's like, oh, okay. I'm all like, it was pretty late already. I'm all like, or if you want to spend the night, I got I call it a guest room that's not attached to my house. It had its own independent bedroom, bathroom, and a small little living area next to the bed. I'm all like, hey, just, you could just spend the night right here, and in the morning you could take off. It's all right. And from that day, he never left. We had a good talk in the morning. He told me the situation he was in. I was like, look, bro. I was like, honestly, it's because of you that I'm living the life that I'm living, 100% dog breeding. I don't have a job. I'm doing super good. Why don't you stay with me? And in my mind, I was like, I'm going to pick this guy's brain. I'm going to talk to him. I'm going to get some history. And it's just going to be cool having this real OG breeder around, just to pick his brain on anything I want. And so we worked out a deal. You get to live here for free. Just help me with the dogs. Help me clean them. Help me feed them. It gave me liberty to start doing more stuff outside of my house. At that point, I had 25, 30 dogs. So we worked out a deal, and that was the thing. He'd hang out. He would still enjoy his lifestyle, and he had a place to safely keep his, I think, the Lonelli Bulldogs is what he was working on at that particular time. He was away from the gray line. His whole thing was making blue bulldogs, English bulldogs, starting with American bulldogs. And what he had in his motorhome, which I didn't find out till like 2 or 3 days after we had already worked out the deal where he was going to just live here because he didn't have nowhere to go. And I'm hearing barking when I'm walking by this trailer, and I look in the window, and I was like, he has 2 dogs living in there. I don't know if he was trying to hide them from me or he just didn't say anything, but I was like, hey, you got dogs? He's like, yeah, I'm working on this and this and that, and told me his whole story about his bulldogs, and I told him, well, take them out, and I got 10 by 10 kennels. At that time, I probably had 20 outside and like 6 at an indoor facility. So I'm like, look, I don't have all my kennels set up, so, help me clean the kennels, help me feed these dogs, and your dogs can just live in my kennels, and you don't have to have them in your truck or in your motorhome. And it was great. You know, we worked out a deal, and it was, you know, we went deep sea fishing, all kinds of shit, and I learned what I learned. He told me a whole bunch of history about everything from his side of the world. Just take it. He's the first dude that I knew that had pit bull merchandise in the form of hats, stickers, cups, shirts, sweaters, gray line this, gray line that. Mm-hmm. He was like one of the pioneers of everything. So I felt like, you know what, the least I can do is help this dude out, because how I live and my whole lifestyle revolves around what he loves, and what he had his own bloodline, was gray line bloodline. Before I even met him, my name Blue Line Kennels comes from a spin-off from Gray Line Kennels. I had gray line dogs in my yard, mm-hmm. and you either call them gray pits or blue pits. Mm-hmm. So they had gray line kennels. I made blue line kennels. Mm. You know, using their gray line kennels as a spin-off to make it, fuck it, you could either call it blue or you could call it gray. So fuck it, I'm gonna be blue line. And we're talking about 1995 at this time. Mm. You know, so the history with Gray Line and Tony Moore, and that was my thing. I always, you know, like I said earlier, I went to the shows and I met Oliver La Cruz.
Wait, it had to have been more like 2001, right? When you had your own line already established.
No.
Oh, I'm
Foundation, yes. That was my Foundation produced dogs. And after
Gotcha. I just wanted to make sure I was understanding it correctly.
Yeah. The timeline you're talking about was when I bought my Foundation, which was a Gotti daughter, Monster daughter, and a couple other different bloodlines and gray line dogs that made that. Gotcha. And then I was like the dude that. I was a dude that kind of wanted to already, with a breeder mentality, produce my own dogs rather than buy anything and just try to take the production away from who produced the dogs and make my name out of that. You know, which at that time was happening a lot. You had some there right now, and they're even in your archives of interviewees, is certain people that, in my mind, are more of a great promoter than a great producer. Mm. And in this game, some of the more famous dogs are famous because they had people that knew the importance of promotion and how to promote, and they weren't shy to spend promotion money, you know what I'm saying? Mm. And they became known and everything, but it was from a dog they bought from somebody else that they knew how to promote, and at the end of the day, they kind of tried to make their own light out of it. You know, I don't want to say it, but there's not just one person. There was a lot of people like that. Yeah, people you haven't interviewed yet, but at that time, it was people with they were business people, and I would say, like, and I know because I'm a breeder, this is your lifestyle.